Hey everyone, welcome to Secret of Mana Redux, your very own guide to this mana beast of a video game. Today, we're going to be talking about three of Emperor Vandal's generals. That's Gesthar, Sheex, and Fanha. We're told that they're capable of anything. And I believe it. Just look at how they coordinate those uniforms. What they weren't too good at was sticking around, because all three only made the briefest of appearances in Secret of Mana. There's next to nothing about these characters in the game itself, so when I started the Redux project way back in 2016, one of the first things I did was start digging for whatever bits were out there. And yes, we found some things. So get ready for some next level shoulder pad action coming your way. In Japanese, Vandal's generals are known as Shitenno, literally four heavenly kings, divine entities who are responsible for each cardinal direction. The idea of a legendary figure having exactly four retainers with this name is a common trope in Japanese history, video games, movies, everything. Secret of Mana's contemporary, Final Fantasy VI, had Gesthar and his four heavenly rulers. It's tough to come up with a good English word, so I'll just stick with generals for now. Gesthar got the most screen time of the three. Like the Final Fantasy VI Emperor, his name could also have been localized as Gesthar, though their names are not quite the same in Japanese. We learned in our last video that Gesthar was a mechanical genius with knowledge of ancient technology that disappeared after the war that wiped out the old civilization. It's easy to see why Vandal kept him in his closest circle, seeing as how the leader of the Empire was looking to resurrect the ancient mana fortress. In the Japanese script, Gesthar is characterized as more of a military man. He addresses the party as Shokun, basically a formal greeting to a group like gentlemen, but he actually uses this word mockingly as if he's speaking to a group of bumbling amateurs in contrast to the Empire's efficient military. We first meet Gesthar in the Water Palace where he breaks the seal on the Water Seed as part of the Empire's quest to break all 8 seals and raise the Lost Continent to gain access to the Mana Fortress. He forces Randy to turn over the Water Seed and summons a two-headed monster to fight them that translator Ted Woolsey called the Jabberwocky. This may have been a mistake on Ted's part, as the monster in the Lewis Carroll poem was only known as the Jabberwock. The Japan-only Fundamental Knowledge Guide from 1993 had more on this charming thing. A two-headed monster with all the characteristics of a reptile. It fully extends its neck to bite. In addition, although the movement of the two necks is perfectly linked, they exist as independent living organisms, and therefore will survive even if the other is cut off. There's actually 3 Jabberwockies in the game's code that can spawn perfectly at the same time and work perfectly. Understandably, Japan more or less got everything we didn't, which is to say, more or less everything in the first place, as they also got the adventure guide that had adorable cartoons that showed Japanese kids how to defeat the game's boss monsters. This is the one for the Jabberwocky that was scanlated for Redux some years ago. The next time we meet Gesthar is when the Empire attacks the Taznikan sandship in the Kakara Desert. This time, he battles the party himself as a so-called machine rider, appropriate for an Imperial tech nerd. The Fundamental Knowledge Guide says this: the true form of Gesthar, one of the 4 generals of the Vandal Empire. Riding a combat-type hover bike, his ramming attacks are so powerful that even a slight graze can knock you unconscious. His terrifying guided missiles will chase you down no matter where you are. Then, we see Gesthar in the Northtown Palace along with Vandal. Gesthar wishes to reclaim his honor after being embarrassed in Kakara. The Japanese script makes clear that Gesthar fell short of Vandal's expectations. Randy and friends then battle Gesthar on the roof of the Northtown Palace, where he's now Machine Rider 2. One of Secret of Mana's all-time code analysts is known as Regers, and he pointed out in a legendary 2014 GameFAQs thread that Gesthar is obsessed with getting in horizontal alignment with your characters, so much that he'll stop attacking to move his bike down. On the roof of the Northtown Palace, Gesthar can't fit into your space if you stand on the ledge like this, so you can just stand here and more or less attack him at will. He might fire some missiles in retaliation, but they usually miss. We also learned in our last video that Gesthar was part cyborg here. Let's go back to the fundamental knowledge guide. Gesthar succeeded in becoming the ultimate cyborg by turning half of his body into a machine and completely integrating with his bike. Significant improvements have been made to the machine itself, and guided missiles have been powered up. In addition, he can cast speed up to accelerate even more. After the battle, Gesthar more or less explodes, but he's later resurrected by Thanatos and fought a third time as a zombie machine rider known as Machine Rider 3. Here we go again. Gesthar has been transformed by Thanatos into a completely emotionless combat mechanism. He attacks with great stamina, riding a machine with a roaring engine. He uses fire magic, but his greatest weapon is the wave cannon mounted on his machine. We just heard about the dreaded wave cannon, which worked perfectly for the previous Machine Rider, but Machine Rider 3 rarely pulls off this attack, along with another one called diffuser cannon. That is, unless you go far out of your way to make it happen. The reason is that Gesthar's AI is way out of whack the third time. Let's take a look. If Machine Rider 3 doesn't have wall, then it casts wall on itself. If Machine Rider 3 has wall, it will check for power-ups or debuff magic from your party, and if it doesn't have any, it'll cast speed up. If both of those are in place, it will use wave cannon if it has more than 50% HP, and diffuser cannon if it has less. The problem is that since he's walled, his speed up spell just reflects onto one of your characters, and he never gets to either cannon unless you manage to debuff him. Of course, Regers did, and provided this screenshot of diffuser cannon. Throughout the Redux project, I've been in touch with Regers, and he tells me that all three Machine Riders have serious programming issues, and it was likely a quagmire to make Gesthar viable for the SNES. Let's move on to Sheex. Not that you need me to tell you, but Sheex is my favorite character in Secret of Mana. In fact, he's the greatest video game character of all time. You just heard that on the internet, so it's automatically true. Right off the bat, there's two huge things about Sheex that we didn't learn on the Super Nintendo. The Japanese script and promotional materials revealed that Sheex was the leader of the four generals, though he's never actually seen in that capacity during gameplay. We also learned in many Japanese sources that he was a prominent user of a Sword of Darkness. This means that in a way, he's a nice foil to Randy in his Mana Sword, the old counter sword trick. This Japanese promotion from the 2018 remaster drives the point home. Sheex of Darkness, one of the four generals of the Vandal Empire, the Hand of the Emperor, the Shadow and the Sword. Not even the hero of the Mana Sword is a match for the Dark Sword. There's two images of Sheex in the 1993 Dengeki Book of Mana. It's emphasized here that he's a fearless master of espionage who avoids public appearances and traveled to Taznica alone. Other than a brief walk to the left that a fan had to remind me of, Sheex doesn't even move in Secret of Mana, and the Cutting Room Floor website reveals that his animations were left unfinished anyhow. Over at the Spreader's resource, we found these sprites featuring an unused alternate form with a helmet. Also included here is an alternate unused sprite of Gesthar holding his helmet. Besides a brief appearance in the Northtown Palace, Sheex is first encountered in Taznica, where he's been impersonating the king, or Chancellor in the 2018 remake. The reason the remake went with Chancellor is because Taznica is a republic, and republics don't have kings, despite the fact that this fellow was wearing a crown and robes. The Fundamental Knowledge Guide had info about Darkstalkers, which might apply to Sheex too. A ninja who fell in battle but was resurrected by selling his soul to the devil. He can now use high-level magic while retaining his special skills, such as the limited body technique, shuriken attack, and Ichimonji thrust. Ichimonji refers to their vertical sword technique. We could endlessly speculate as to why Sheex was fought as a common Darkstalker enemy, but there's one thing I will mention here. Secret of Mana designer Koichi Ishii was interviewed about its spiritual sequel Trials of Mana in 1995. When asked if there was anything that was implemented in Trials that couldn't be done in secret, he mentioned complex boss monsters like Dolan that had to be moved to the later title. Ishii said, "There's a lot of these really huge bosses in Trials of Mana. In Secret of Mana, we were limited in terms of the size and shape for the bosses, and we had to constrain our boss battles within those boundaries. The bosses in Trials of Mana were like a big reaction or a backlash to those limitations, which explained why so many of them are so huge. There's a boss in Trials of Mana with a dark sword known as the Darkshine Knight who resembles Sheex a lot. It's not hard to imagine that something similar was planned for Sheex. The internal cartridge for Trials was vastly superior to Secret, making all of this possible. Here, we see the Darkshine Knight in the Trials remake. The only other appearance for Sheex is in the Tree Palace, where he makes a stand against Randy. It turns out that like Vandal, he signed a so-called contract with the underworld. Essentially, he sold his soul to Hades in exchange for special power. In this case, he turns into an Egagropalon. This is derivative of Egagropala, called Marimo in Japanese, literally ball seaweed. Marimo are found in Japan among other places, and you can even grow them in your own aquarium and have your very own alternate underworld form. If there's a current, they'll roll around just like Sheex. In Japanese, he's known as Megazorn, a Dungeons & Dragons reference. A grotesque monster with thick pointed fangs and unusually long legs. Its mouth can swallow anything and pull it into another dimension. Also, be careful of its ramming attacks when it folds its legs up into its body and rolls around violently. This is likely referencing Sheex' chomping attack, which wasn't finished for the SNES release but was by some very talented fans. Sheex was not seen for almost 30 years before an appearance in the Echoes of Mana mobile game in 2022. This game is long gone now, but thank the Mana Goddess for YouTube and Discord. This time, you could fight Sheex as Sheex. You could even have Sheex on your own team. And I didn't even get to play it. At last, we have Fanha. Like Sheex, Fanha only addresses the party twice. The first time is a very brief introduction on the Lost Continent. Fanha, through her dialogue, embodies the Oju-sama trope, the refined young woman who may or may not be from a wealthy background, but she certainly acts like it. She uses the highly polite pronoun watakushi, and condescendingly refers to Randy as something like little boy. The sentiment in both the Japanese script and guides is that she really doesn't like Randy, despite having hardly met him. The Dengeki Book of Mana makes clear that she harbors a deep secret, likely referring to plotting behind Vandal's back with Thanatos for some time. Fanha ends up being responsible for ending the seemingly clueless Vandal, and buys time for Thanatos by turning into Hexus, a huge snake-like thing with 4 arms. This could also be what the Book of Mana was talking about. This form is her own gift from the underworld. The animation of this character was striking for the time. It was created by Shinichi Kamioka, who also designed the 3 main characters. Kamioka-sama also made the realistic wall-face monsters. A villain resembling Hexus appeared in 2 other Mana games, Trials of Mana and Sword of Mana. A monster with the upper body of a beautiful woman and the lower body of a giant snake. Her uneven appearance instills great fear in people. Her 4 arms contain great magical ability, and she has the power to shrink her enemies. Beware her beautiful but cold gaze. Hexus is supposed to have magic for every element, but her Sylphid spells never fire due to a bug. Fanha also made an appearance in Echoes of Mana. Like Sheex, she had more lines here than she did in Secret of Mana. You could also fight Fanha as Fanha, but Hexus still came around as a special attack, and yes, Fanha was another character you could control. From what I'm told, neither of these characters' new lines and echoes of mana shed any light on them, other than revealing continued loyalty to the Empire even after all these years. In the height of coincidence, Sheex and Fanha would certainly have had more content had Echoes not been abruptly cancelled. Now we see that there was a bit of a hierarchy, and we can note an extremely fine detail that the designers implemented. Sheex, being the leader, has a magic level of 7, Fanha's is 6, and Gesthar has 5. Maybe someday Square will make a game that gives these three their due. Until then, we'll just have to be happy with what we have. I certainly haven't forgotten about the 4th General, Thanatos himself, but he'll be covered along with Vandal in a future video. There's one last character we have to discuss, however. This mysterious character is in the ROM's memory near some of Vandal's generals. It even has an arms raised pose as if it were a magic user. And unlike Sheex, this character has a complete set of walking animations. It may have been a planned general that was scrapped in favor of Sheex, as this character's assets are near the other generals, and Sheex is way off elsewhere in the ROM's memory. We'd love to hear your theories on these characters, and we have a lot more videos coming, so be sure to follow our channel, find us on X at Mana Redux, and take a look at our website at manaredux.com. Thanks for watching. Until next time.